Any successful builder needs to look at a project from the end and reverse engineer it back to the beginning. What is this going to cost to buy the lot, to build, to finance, all the carrying costs, closing costs, and they need to see, is there still margin in that deal? One thing that happens a lot sometimes is you'll have builders who are relatively new into doing it. They use really big fat numbers. They look at, here's what I can sell this thing for. Here's what it's going to cost me to buy the land, and here's what it's going to cost me to build. Oh, look at all this profit I have. They don't account for closing costs, cost of funds, and suddenly this number is a lot smaller. Obviously, cash is king. If they're sitting on a big chunk of cash and they're going to fund the whole thing out of pocket, then absolutely you can use those big fat fuzzy numbers. But if any kind of scale, you're going to leverage your cash using someone else's cash so you can do more. And when it's all said and done, is my final product going to be 70% loan to value? Well, all my costs, am I going to be around that 70% mark? That's a healthy deal for a builder.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Krisa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
Brian, I want to thank you for being on the call today. I really appreciate you taking the time. Number one, you're an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to funding builds and working with builders. You're an integral part of Sound Capital, which is the company that keeps my lights on so we can be doing this podcast. And I call them the mothership because they make things all possible for the show. So again, without overstating, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be on the call today.
No problem. My pleasure.
So before we get into the nuances of funding, because ultimately where I'd like to go, and tell me if I'm like way off the mark here.
Yeah.
I want to be able to take a fledgling, and I mean that with respect, fledgling builder that is looking to up his game. Maybe they're doing 10 houses. Now they want to make that leap to 20 or 20 to 30, whatever that quantum leap is for them. And give them the ability, let's say from 60,000 feet looking down, to be able to underwrite their own projects. And my thought process here, and correct me if I'm wrong, if they have an understanding of how money works and how they can do that, that makes them a better candidate for you because they've done their homework more or less, and you can see what's going to work and not work. Am I too naive in that approach? And correct me
No,
if I'm wrong here.
no, you're not. I think any successful builder needs to look at a project from the end of, here's what we think these things will be worth, and they need to reverse engineer it back to the very beginning. What is this thing going to cost me to buy the lot, to build, to finance, all the carrying costs, closing costs, and they need to see, is there still margin in that deal? One thing you have that happens a lot sometimes is you'll have builders who are relatively new into doing it where they're responsible for the bank account. They use really big fat numbers. They look at, here's what I can sell this thing for. Here's what it's going to cost me to buy the land, and here's what it's going to cost me to build. Oh, look at all this profit I have. They don't account for, well, you have closing costs, you have cost of funds, and suddenly this number is a lot smaller. Obviously, cash is king. If they're sitting on a big chunk of cash and they're going to fund the whole thing out of pocket, then absolutely you can kind of use those big fat fuzzy numbers. But if any kind of scale, you're going to leverage your cash using someone else's cash so you can do more. And I think what they always need to look at then is, hey, when it's all said and done, and they can use kind of rough math on financing, is my final product going to be 70% loan to value? All my costs, am I going to be under that, around that 70% mark? That's a healthy deal for a builder. It can go up to, the 85% loan to cost, or my total cost. What kind of margin? Now, granted, the more scale you have, you can function with a little smaller margin because you're going to make it up in volume. Now, you don't want to be one of those, that old cliche, well, we're losing money on this deal, so we'll just make it up in volume, right? You want to make sure you're doing it right. And I think you also got to builders need to look at the scale of the project they're trying to do. If you're looking like, hey, I want to build a $2.5 million house, Well, when people come and show up to negotiate on a $2.5 million house, suddenly the counter offers, they're talking $100,000, $50,000 swings. Unlike if you're selling a $500,000 house, someone's like, "Hey, can I get a $5,000 builder credit?" So you got to account for that in looking what you're building as well. And then as far as, hey, what is financing cost? You know, probably a good fat round number if they want to estimate is say in today's market, I'm going to be paying 10% interest. They're probably going to be within a half a point either direction in where the market is today as they are building their pro forma and trying to figure out what is my cost to carry this project going to be. And then they can calculate it out based on how long they think they're going to take to build the project and all that fun stuff. And they should probably always build in a 10% contingency on their budget, unless it's some particular house, especially kind of more of a cookie cutter spec build, production build kind of product that, oh, we've already built this house 14 times in the last 6 months. We know to the nickel how much it costs to build. Otherwise, if it's kind of this one off, different plan every time, they definitely should build in that 10% contingency just to make sure this deal is going to make sense for them.
I guess, yeah, you could almost call it a what if fund because what if it's on the market longer than we thought? What if we ran into complications in anything, like, the trades didn't show up, whatever that is. I guess there's two ways to look at it. In the ideal world, if all the stars align and the gods are happy, I'm going to make this much money. But what you're saying here, it's better to err on the side of caution. And if there's more money left at the end of the day, wonderful. But you don't want to lose your shirt because you overestimated how much you're going to get and underestimated what the potential costs and risks could be.
Right. An example, I have a builder right now. It's going to be a pretty big, substantial house, and it's on a hillside lot in a neighborhood where they built before. And typically, you dig the hole, and it's just kind of a bunch of crushed up granite and dirt, just to kind of dig it out. Well, they got in there, and after they got about 3 feet down, they hit a boulder. This boulder was the size of about 4 Greyhound buses. So their excavation budget went from 350,000 to the excavation and the foundation, the wall, to almost $800,000 just to get this rock out, to chip it out, to grind it out. So you got to account for things. I mean, that's an extreme example. I mean, lucky for them that this is going to be a $15 million house when it's done and millions of dollars of profit, but it's still, oh, there's an extra
Man,
500K that just went
that's when
to
you're
the ground.
questioning, was this the right path for me, or should I be flipping burgers at Wendy's? Yeah, 800,000. Wow. Okay.
To
Well,
dig a hole.
i- is it fair that we could use? Let's do this in categories. Let's start
Yeah.
off with the smaller builder,
Mhm.
and this could be a framer. So, and correct me if I'm wrong here. There's usually an evolution, if you will, and I see it with framers, and for some reason concrete people that are pouring concrete. They've done it enough times that they think, you know what, I can be doing this. I can be building a home, and they're willing to step off the pulpit and now try to do it all. And they assemble their team together because they've got friends that they've worked with over
Yep.
the years, so they know they can assemble this team. So I figure they can either do it one way, they use the house money and maybe they've scraped stuff together. They're taking out a mortgage against their house, which is probably really bad to do. Can they go conventional? Like, would a bank even look at them in a situation like that? Or is that based all upon equity and their credit score and everything else? Like, talk to me like I'm six. And let's start off with that small builder that wants to make that leap into being a contractor.
Right. A small builder starting out, will will a bank lend them money? Mm, possibly, but unlikely in today's market. Even builders who were when someone was hiring a builder to build a house, the options for them to get a loan, a construction loan, there was every credit union, local bank, they were all doing it. Now that number has shrunk dramatically. So now you go and you take a spec builder. So what's spec stand for? Speculative. So there's more from a lending side, there's more risk in that. And so that number's dropped even more. And if you show up as, hey, I'm Joe the framer with my buddy Bob the concrete dude, and we formed our LLC and we're going to build houses, they're going to go, yeah, well, that's awesome. How much money do you have to put into our bank? That's going to be one of the questions they ask. And I've heard some ridiculous numbers of a guy who needed to borrow $1 million to build houses, and the bank said, no problem, just deposit $1 million into our bank. And it's kind of like, well, if I had that, I would just use my own $1 million. So it's going to be trickier for them. They might be able to get a loan to do one house. And if all they want to do is like, hey, we're going to build one house a year, we're going to build this house because we're still running a framing company and a concrete company. And this one house is our little side project. And they get a relationship with their local credit union. Credit unions are usually the best bet in that case. That can probably work for them. And they build one, sell one, want to build another, sell it, build another, and they can just probably rinse and repeat and just keep doing that with their local credit union. They are going to have credit requirements. They're going to want to see tax returns, bank statements. They're going to underwrite their businesses and their income. But again, if they just want to build one house a year, that's probably a great solution for them. Honestly, that money is going to be cheaper probably than going into a private insurance-backed money like we are. But then if they have such great success and they go, this is much better than pouring concrete. Let's build 6 houses next year. Credit union's going to say, yeah, no, we said we'd give you money for one. Now what do they do? So that's the next step. And then when they need to come to someone like a Sound Capital, who all we do is focus on builders who want to build spec houses and say, great, let's set up a program that works for you. What do you have to bring to the table? They're going to need some cash. The people who go to, I don't know if they go to some weird seminar or something that they probably paid 10,000 to go to, that someone tells them you need no money to flip houses or no money to build houses. I don't know where they think they're going to find that money, but there's always needs to be skin in the game. So
You're talking about the days of Tom Vu, if memory serves me, on the yacht with the women with breasts hanging out, and you too can be rich, my friend, in real estate. And they showed the Rolls Royce and all that. Yeah,
yeah, back post recession, so we're talking 2010, 2011. I was doing a whole lot of hard money lending on trustee sales, guys buying things at the courthouse in the Phoenix area. And I mean, hundreds of those were getting sold a day. And we always knew when there was a weekend seminar that rolled through town of someone claiming you can buy houses with no money down, because suddenly Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, our phone's ringing off the hook. Like, oh, I want to go bid. And I've been told I don't need any money down. Like, well, I'd call the person who told you that and ask them to lend you the money. Back to the builders. If again, they made their money off their first house and hey, we got some money, we could do another house. Now we got this cash. Well, let's take that cash and let's divide it up into 5 pieces. And now we can build 5 houses because we're going to put together our piece of money and then some lender is going to come in with the bigger piece. The thing that some new builders get distracted by, and sometimes this is an option they have to take because they don't have the credit or they don't have the experience, is they find a part, some private guy who's willing to come in and lend them money to build the house. And all he wants, usually he charges what I normally see is very cheap interest, like, oh, I only charge you 6% or 5%, because he's probably borrowing the money anyway off a money market account or something, and he's covering the cost. And then we just split the profit. Well, that's expensive if you think about it. If you're having to give them half of what you make, now if that's your only option, half of something's better than 100% of nothing. So that's always good. But when you come to now into the world of private money, such as Sound Capital, sometimes people like 8%, that's or 10%, that's high. I saw the billboard on the street saying mortgage rates are 6.25. Well, that's for a mortgage. 10% compared to splitting half your profit is still cheap. We're a cheap partner, so to speak, even though we're not your partner because we're not going to tell you what we want you to do with the house.
and there's another part to this. And again, I'm getting acclimatized to the sound culture, if you will. And one of the reasons I came on board to do this podcast is because of Gary Elwood, who we both know, the CMO. And like Gary is as straight as an arrow in terms of what he stands for, his values, and the fact that he's working with Sound Capital that basically told me in a nutshell everything I needed to know. Because if he's involved, that means I need to be involved because what we stand for and what we believe is in perfect alignment.
Yeah.
So to your point about money, it costs more potentially I guess it comes down to, and the same argument can be made in real estate. Why does one agent charge 3%, but another agent charges 5%? Aren't they both just selling a home? They put a sign on the lawn, they send out some postcards. But the backstory is that you're paying for the years and years of experience to get the home sold, the marketing savvy to get the job done. And there's so much more that's involved that people don't see. It's the perfect story. I think it was Ford Company. If you can imagine like a big assembly line, the big mighty beast that goes on for
Mm.
infinity, you look down the hallway and all of a sudden the machine just stops dead. And you've probably heard the story. The millwrights are jumping all over it and their top mechanics are trying to breathe life back into this thing, but they can't. And for every minute that it's down, it's a cascading effect because everything down line is now stopped as well. So they call the guy who's apparently retired and he shows up and he's got his little toolbox and he knows the machine because he used to work there for 40 years. And he walks up and down, climbs on top of the thing, and he pulls out a little hammer and he taps the machine twice. And then he yells down the line for them to power it up. And this mighty beast roars to life like nothing ever happened. And he puts the hammer back into his little box and he sends in the invoice for the work done. And a week later, the foreman sees this invoice and he's going, "What the $20,000? All the guy did was hit it with a hammer." And I go, "It's not about the hammer. It's about knowing where to use the hammer."
Right.
And when I look at you guys, the big difference is if I look at a bank says, "Okay, let's get a deal done. We're going to charge you X for Y." But with sound, you're actually picking up, if I will, a chief financial officer because sound, with your permission, is willing to be that third eye that can objectively look at your build and say, "Okay, did you consider this?" Because a builder, especially at the beginning, can be so emotionally attached to the outcome of the project
Mhm.
that they don't see all the scary dragons that are lined up in the periphery. And that's where you guys come into the mix as sound because you can point these out and say, "Brian, did you consider this? Have you seen this? Maybe this isn't the build for you."
I
And
I
that's got a value to it.
Yeah, I talk people out of deals all the time, and, I only get paid if we close a deal. I don't get paid just for my good looks and talking on the phone. I get paid to get
I was
deals
looking for cash right now. I was going to cut you a check there.
deals closed, but I want them to win because if the builder wins and is successful, well, it's like a drug. They're not gonna just do it once. They're gonna do it over and over and over again, and who can they go to do that? And I think what we understand too is, I mean, essentially, we're a commodities broker. We're selling money. My dollar bill, you walk down to Home Depot to buy some lumber, they're not going to say, "Oh, that dollar's from Sound Capital. That's actually worth a buck 25 here." No, my dollar's worth just as much as the bank's dollar or any other guy's dollar. But it's what do we back that up with, that dollar? What kind of service? How do we make it better? I always say you can tell someone, "Hey, I want to buy a new car. I want a V6. I want 4 doors. I want an automatic transmission and an air conditioner." Awesome. Is a Hyundai different than a Mercedes Benz? Because they both have 4 doors, a V6 engine, automatic transmission, and air conditioner. Why does one cost a heck of a lot more than the other? Well, it's what do you get with that? And we understand, like for us, processing draws is very, very important, all the way to the top to our CEO. He does not want to ever not be able to fund a draw because he knows in this business, that's a kiss of death, not only for the lender, but for the builder. If you're a builder and you just fronted out all this money to get this house framed, you're like turning your draw to get the check back. So you got all this cash back in to get the next phase, and your lender goes, "Yeah, we don't have any money to fund your draw right now. It's that assembly line just shut down."
Well, let me jump on that because I don't want to miss this point. Like the nuance is really powerful here. It's not that a bank is purposely saying, "Well, Brian, today it's Thursday, 3 o'clock. We're not going to fund you today because we can." The pressure's being now put on them by the Fed, and in essence, right across the U.S. right now, banks have to pull back from their portfolio in the
Mhm.
building department. So they could have already made that commitment. So let me ask you that question. They've already made the commitment. The builder's got shovels in the ground. He's got expenses that he's already occurred. Are you finding situations now where they are getting screwed in that respect? Not out of malice, but The bank has just been told we have to cut back and we can't follow through on what we said we would do.
What I'm finding from the bank side, because there's really, I talk to clients, potential builders that are using two forms of financing, either a bank or another private lender like Sound Capital. From the bank, what is normally happening is the bank is honoring the commitment on that project. But sometimes they're talking to the bank and like, yeah, we're going to build 5 of these spec homes. And the bank says, that's awesome, great. Okay. And then the builder goes and he pays it to buy those 5 lots and he starts the first house. He gets it going, puts in his draws, starts the second house, gets his draws. And now he goes to his bank and goes, hey, we're ready to start the third one. He goes, whoa, actually, we can't fund 3 through 5, but I already bought these lots. Yeah, sorry. Maybe if after you finish house 1 and sell it, we can start house 3. And now they're like, well, great. I just put all this cash in these lots. I'm sitting there. What do I do? Those are the cases when guys do call us and say, hey, my bank's doing these first 2. Can you do the other 3? And we absolutely. Now, on the other side, guys using private money is I do have talked to builders who they get nickel and dimed to death on their draws. They put in a draw for $100,000 and, the inspector goes out and we send out an inspector too. You tell me you want to draw because you framed a house. We're going to verify the house was framed before we give you money for it. But then they get these reports back and the lender goes, well, we were looking at the framing and the inspector said you're missing a 2x4 here, or you're missing this there. So we're only going to fund you $70,000. What? But I spent 100. I paid my framer $100,000 for all the lumber and to put it all together. Yeah, maybe we can get you on the next one. And so they're getting frustrated. I mean, they end up working their way through that house with that lender, but they don't want to start the next one because it's usually not cost effective to start all over with a brand new lender halfway through a project if you don't have to. But then they don't want to do it again. And so we try to make it so that process is as smooth as possible. Would I say, hey, our draws are always funded flawlessly? No, I'd be lying if I said that, but I'd say majority of the time they are. And usually when they're not, it's what I found is it's normally I'll have a builder call me, Brian, you guys aren't funding my draw all the way. And I had one example is like, well, this is the first draw for the foundation and you're asking for 100% of your overhead for the whole project. Well, yeah, it's 10% of the project, so they'll pay you 10% of the over, questions like that. But normally that is kind of our pride is we realize you have to make the transaction as easy as possible because you want the builder to focus on building. As a
Well, you want
lender,
them to like. I would think that the idea here is if you do this right, they become lifetime partner, right? So the hardest thing to do is go out and find a new customer. The easiest thing to grow your business is to focus on the ones that you have that already know, like, and trust you. And
right,
I would think that if you're if you're bringing number one the building savvy that you have, again that third set of eyes, I mean that's going to save me all kinds of grief and pain. And as you said the reward for us is you getting the build done because you make money, we make money, and then let's shake hands, wash, rinse, repeat, and let's keep this going. It's no different than going on the first date with somebody. You comb your hair, you put on your best shirt, best foot forward, all that kind of stuff because you're building the relationship. And then you get it to a point where, yeah, you trust one another and you every Friday night you go dancing. I would think that's akin to what happens in the building trades that once you've created that relationship, there's that mutual trust that based on performance, we've already funded the first build or the second build. We know that you're going to get the job done. From the builder's perspective, they know that they don't have to stay up nights worrying about whether sound is going to come through with the money. So it just seems like it's such a win-win that collaboratively you're both going to make money off this thing.
right. I like to consider myself as a trusted advisor, or at least I want to build up that relationship where the builder looks to me as a trusted advisor. I try not to throw out the name partner because then if a deal goes bad, they want to come to me and go, hey, partner, let's, it's like, well, we're not. And because it's funny, if a guy did something wrong, project went bad and he's going to not lose $10,000, he loves to come to me to see how we can help them to not lose as much, but they never seem to call us when suddenly the house sold for 50 grand more than they thought and said, "Hey, thanks for everything." So I like to not say partner, I like to say trusted advisor and help them through the process. Again, like you said, we analyze the deal up front. Does this make sense? So, I mean, we look at profitability on a deal. We don't just look at loan to value, loan to cost. We kind of take into account some formulas. Now, granted, it's an 11-inch ruler, but you know roughly what closing costs will be, what cost of sales will be, and then time, and kind of look at it like, hey, this deal does not look profitable. Why are we doing this deal? Why are you doing this deal? What are we missing? It's a way then to have a conversation to talk about what are you seeing? Why do you think this is going to be good versus what I'm seeing on my side? And as I said, sometimes I've had guys back out of deals. They go, yeah, you know what? I totally missed that. Didn't even look at that. We were just churning and burning so fast. Yeah, we're going to skip on this one, but hey, here's another one. And then you keep moving. And it's nice then for that builder to have someone in their corner to help them, because if they're working with a traditional broker, a lot of times brokers just want to do whatever they need to do, get the deal closed, earn their point, make their boat payment, and ride off into the sunset. Where we want to look at a deal, like you said, ultimate success for us is we get paid off.
Well, you've got so I can say, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, your approach or your vision would be completely different than a bank, because a bank, it's about the transaction. Now, mind you, they may send me a calendar at Christmas or, a pen or something. But the guy that's doing the deal at the bank, 9 times out of 10 is not a builder, has no build experience, but he's going through a checklist and he's marking off all the little things that he's supposed to ask and you're supposed to answer.
Right.
Versus from the sound perspective, you guys have the savvy, because a lot of you have the build experience and the financial, which is rare that you've got the two together. And you can objectively look at the build and say, yeah, this one looks like a moneymaker. This one is a turd, run as fast as you can. And you don't, how do I say it? You're not afraid to tell them that.
Right.
You'd rather, and I think the adage is, if I check the tattoo, I'd rather turn you down than let you down.
Yeah, and I think, the one difference between someone like Sound Capital and a bank is a bank, they look at a loan, it's 100% scientific. Where it's a mix of science and art. If everyone agrees, hey, here's 20 boxes that need to be checked to do this loan, the bank is going to say, we need all 20 of those boxes checked with a big old fat Sharpie. 100%, no ifs, ands, or buts. Well, we can look at it. I mean, there's going to be 10 boxes that no matter what need to be checked, right? But you get down and we got 18 of these things checked. And these other two boxes, this is a little off here, this is a little off there. But we can look at kind of a layered risk of credit and go, you know what? These two boxes aren't checked, but all these other things line up just perfectly that this deal makes sense. Let's figure out how we can do it. And then we can have that conversation also with the builder, because all we do is focus on loans for builders of like, hey, do you know if we take this here and you actually move it over here, then this deal works. Oh, I never looked at it that way. Yeah. And so it's kind of like, how can we come up with a structure that can work for them and work for us? Where again, a bank just has their linear, it has to be follow this line perfectly. You got to, not only is it 20 boxes, but you have to check them in order. 1, 2, 3, 4. We might go, yeah, we're going to check box 1 through 6. Oh, we just checked box 18. Now we're going back. See, can we get 7, 8? Oh, now, hey, 15, just to try to make that process move as smoothly as possible.
Just to be clear, it's not that you're making shortcuts, so there's nothing shady here, but you're trusting in the relationship because that's what you're trying to build. After you've done something with that builder, then I don't want to say those boxes aren't as important, but you've got the builder's credibility now because you've done a deal with them and you know what they're like.
Well, I mean, that is one thing different between us and a bank is we approve the borrower once. You go through the hoops you got to jump through. Maybe sometimes it feels like some of those hoops are lit on fire, but you get approved. Then we do the project, and now you got your next house. Those hoops are gone. We've already jumped through all those. Now it's just, let's look at this house. What's your budget? What's it appraised for? Here's our loan amount. Here's what we can do. Move on to the next. Where a bank wants to re-underwrite you as a person every single house. Oh, hey, I need your last 2 months of bank statements now and your tax returns. And what did you have for breakfast yesterday? And we saw you ran a stop sign 2 days ago, whatever it may be. Where from us, once you are approved as a borrower, I'm not going to ask to send me a list of your experience before because I've already looked at it all. Maybe I add one because it's the house we just did. But
Yeah.
I'm not gonna have you send me a whole list again of your experience. We've already done that. So that helps that process of moving things through once you're done.
So when you talk about the process, not everyone is a prime candidate for sound capital because
Sure.
you set a benchmark, and correct me if I'm wrong here. They have to have had at least a minimum of 10 homes in their name.
Correct. Yeah, we like to see that they have we call it 10 doors in the
Okay.
last 36 months. And we say doors because you build a duplex that actually counts as two, because they're two individual sales. You sell them individually, how things are done. But we do want to see that you had an ownership interest. Because back to your very early example of Mr. Concrete guy decides, hey, I got a lot of cash. I want to build a house. That's awesome. But have you ever done it before where you're responsible for writing the check for every single piece of this house? If you haven't, yeah, we're not going to be the fit for you. We want to see that you've actually been able to manage a house, a project from cradle to grave successfully, and done it more than once. Because even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. So we got to make sure it's something that you can do on repeat. And that's sometimes you see some of these. We do have people that will come together that they form a partnership because Bob built 5, Jimmy built 3, and Susie's built 4. And they come together and form an LLC, and we go, combined, you guys have built 10. Congratulations. Let's go. Let's go build the next one. And
I didn't know that. That's cool. I didn't know you could do combined efforts.
yeah, because then we feel like there's enough knowledge gained by the school of hard knocks there that combined, they can figure out how things work. And we do have a credit requirement. We'd like to see everyone have above a 680 credit score. And the only other thing we really care about is we'll do a background check, and it's kind of like no felonies, especially financial crimes. If you've committed wire fraud 3 times, we probably don't want to lend you money.
But 2 times is okay, just the 3rd
Yeah,
one,
just
okay.
even once, we're going to say
Yeah.
no. But if you like to drive fast a lot? Okay, well, that's okay. We don't care. Or I did something stupid when I was 18 and now I'm 42 and building. Okay. Yeah, we're not, but just kind of what makes sense there.
I think that the important thing is underwriting all this is that idea of trust, that once you've worked with the builder, you've established that trust, that bond, and you're in this together, but I'm gonna use your terminology, you're the trusted advisor that is gonna help deliver them to the promised land, in essence.
And
Yeah.
I think where we can help too is because we're not a broker, we manage the loan, we fund the draws, we service the loan all the way to the end. That anytime just after the loan closed doesn't mean you can't still call me. Anytime doing that, since you can't say, "Hey, Brian, I'm having problems with a draw." Great, let me see what's going on. Let me reach out to my draw department and find out what's going on, see how I can help you. It's not like, "Oh, yeah, sorry, you got to call my servicing department." And that's even if you are dealing with a bank, unless you're some kind of huge builder with a massive portfolio going on that you have a dedicated banker that bends over backwards because that's how he makes his house payment just on you. If you're just a small builder and you call the guy who helped you do the loan at the bank and say, "Hey, I'm having problems with my draw," they're going to say, "Oh, we need to you need to call our construction management department. There should be a 800 number on the bottom of your last statement," or, something silly like that. Now you're talking to someone who doesn't know who you are, doesn't know anything about you, doesn't know anything about your project until you call them and they pull up and you can hear them typing and kind of reading through notes, and where we know your project. We helped you put the project together. And that's also the difference you can get from then
It
working with
almost
the
sounds like there's the connection is if when I think of the bank, the money is an abstract, right? Whereas I look at you guys, and again, you've got more latitude and flexibility because you're not a bank, so you're not as heavily regulated. So you can navigate those waters more diligently in the favor of the builder. As you said, I don't have to check all 10 boxes or 20, maybe 15 because we know you. So there's a lot of flexibility there. The vision that I'm getting, because I'm a visual thinker, I'm in Sound's office right now. If I open that door behind you, there's this big stack of cash. And Bob, who's just been approved, we can literally see the money is being loaded into little freight cars and taken away by ferries to deliver to Bob. It just seems like it's a more personal and visceral thing that's happening versus some behemoth corporation of a bank that really doesn't care. And I don't mean that, that everybody's a Mr. Drysdale, but at the end of the day, this is just one more deal and they go home. For you guys, again, you've got a vested interest in that client because you're trying to build that long time relationship. Am I too far off the mark with that, or am I too Andy and Mayberry with that
No, I mean,
analogy?
it is more like the vault in Harry Potter, though, that we got our little trolls that run the money down in the basement. But no, you're absolutely right because too we are a small organization. I mean, I think we have a grand total of 60 employees. So we all know the loan. I could call my chief credit officer right now and say, "Hey, I'm working on Joe Smith's loan," and he'll know what I'm talking about. He sees what's going on. "Oh, yeah, yeah, okay, what's the problem? Yeah, we got this issue or we're working on that." "Okay, awesome." And where we all have that intimate knowledge of what's going on and who we're working with, and we as, like, the loan officers, I guess that's our title. I think I'm director of new builder home sales or vice president of lending. I don't know a lot my title.
Is that the typical "we can't pay you more, but we'll give you a title and a nicer business card"?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really my title is, my top titles are husband and father. That's all I care about
Yeah,
or
and don't be late for dinner. Okay, I
yeah,
get it.
so
Yeah,
but we own our clients. I mean, we build these relationships with them. I have some clients now that they'll call me about a deal and it should be a 5-minute phone conversation. Here's the deal. But we end up talking for 45 minutes because we're talking about going mountain biking or what's the ski season going to be this year or how are your kids, because we've built those relationships. And that's important to us because like you said, we care. We want to see them be successful. And selfishly, if they're successful, they're going to want to keep borrowing money. and, and they keep borrowing money. We keep making some money because ultimately we're all capitalists here. They're not building houses to give them away for free. We're not lending money just because we think it's fun. We all want to make a few nickels here and there along the way, but hopefully we are enjoying it in the
yeah.
process.
That when you talk about the enjoyment in the process, I've got to talk about Gary shared with me his BOHOG for the company, the big, hairy, audacious goal. I'm sure you must have heard that the plan is 1,000,000 doors funded in 5 years. So, I mean, that in itself, talk about trying to give back, not to the industry, you're trying to give back to what, humanity? I mean, that's a big goal that you want to build that many homes, 1,000,000 doors. And to achieve that end, you need to be working with builders that share the same vision, that
Right.
they're not out just to make a quick buck. They're out there to make a difference and get people into a home. And just one more thing, I want to throw it in there just so people don't misunderstand here. You guys, by no means, are a small player. I think you're funding on average about a $500 million a year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're not just funding a house or 2 a month by any means. I think what's interesting is there's some lenders out there who wanna focus on the big giant projects, the $50 million loan for some big giant commercial thing. I like to hit singles. How can we build and help builders build as many houses as possible that the biggest breadth of American citizens can afford to buy? That's where we wanna focus. That's where we wanna help guys get going. How do you build a bunch of 400, 500, $600,000 houses depending on what market you're in? That's the way to do it, and that's kind of our goal is that we wanna find those builders, and we wanna work with them to help them ramp up because there's a huge lack of inventory in this country right now of we don't call them affordable housing anymore. Everyone likes to use their new words, achievable housing or or whatever it may be. It's like a duplex is now called a twin home because it sounds nicer, but
Obtainable housing is the big
attainable
buzzword.
housing, yeah,
Obtainable, yeah.
attainable, achievable. That's where we can help. I mean, yeah, it's fun to be the home run hitter and close that giant deal on something, but I always say home run hitters strike out a lot. Let's just hit a lot of singles, and every once in a while you make contact, you get a double, maybe you do hit it over the wall every once in a while, but just keep going. And I think for a builder too, that's more sustainable as well. Building a lot of smaller houses because for them too, it's also rinse and repeat. If you want to just build big, fancy, multi-million dollar houses, well, you can't build the same one over and over again because people aren't going to come stroke you a 7-digit check for a house that looks just like the one next door, unless you're just in one of those places where that's just how much a spec house costs nowadays. But so it's easier for a builder too to scale in that format because then it can become even a rinse and a repeat for them. And all they're doing is, hey, you change an elevation on the front. This house has dormers over the windows. This house has flat windows, and then you don't do the dormers until you're 7 houses down the street again, and now you paint it a different color.
So let's jump on that topic. So we've talked about the smaller builder, and you've said repeatedly that we want to help the builders. We want to help them scale. So how do you take somebody now? Obviously, they've got experience now, they've got savvy, and they're making that jump from 100 to 200 or 100 to 150, but it's
Mhm.
a significant leap. How is it that you help them do that when they reach out to you?
Well, I mean, a lot of that starts in the conversation about the deal, because obviously, if you're going to scale as a builder, now one piece that might come in that you're not familiar with is I got to develop the dirt. I got to take down some land and I got to plat this thing. I got to get it developed and I'm going to do a little 10, 15 house subdivision where before you were just finding other finished lots, picking them up, onesie, twosie, putting them in. But now I want to go scale. Well, what does that conversation sound like? What does that look like? That's where I see builders getting in trouble when they take that first scale. They go in too deep on the dirt because they don't really, if you've never done it before, you don't know what you don't know. It's not just, oh, I come in with some dirt and I run a grader over it, put down some asphalt and start building houses. No, there's a lot more pieces to that from an environmental standpoint, utilities working with municipalities. Are they going to require a bond? Are they going to not require a bond? Are they going to cover the cost of the water lines? Do you have to pay for the water? A lot of these things. So it's at least something that we've done enough or talked to enough builders, we can kind of coach them through it. We can make sure, hey, these are the questions you need to ask. These are the things you need to understand as you go into that, as you're looking for that next step. Yeah, I want to do a subdivision. Okay, that's great. You got to know this, you got to know that. There's a long list of things that they could have to do or spend money on before they even get to the point where they can start putting sticks in the ground to build a house.
Okay,
And
hold on. Time out for a second. Time out, Brian. So, like, are you really physically taking them by the hand and explaining the nuances of building a subdivision with them? Like,
what I do, I mean, me personally, when I talk to someone and they say, and they've never done it before, they're like, hey, Brian, I found this great opportunity. This old farmer has this field he's willing to sell me for pennies on the dollar. And I'll go, hey, Jim, what do you know about that land? Well, I know it's in this great place. I'm like, so how close are city services? What do you mean? Well, is there out on the main road? Is there a water line and a sewer line that you can tap into? Or is this farmer just running off an irrigated a well that, oh, so I can ask those questions and help them through it. Obviously, other guys come to me that they've done that 50 times before. They know more about it than I do. I've just talked to enough people or listened enough or screwed up enough to know, hey, these are the things you need to ask, need to understand. Again, I'm not their partner. I'm just trying to be that trusted advisor of saying, hey, here's some things to help out. And what they also got to understand is in the lending world, most lenders, including us, we don't want to lend on just raw dirt. Joe, the farmer, wants to sell you that old cornfield. That's awesome. You're probably going to need enough cash to pay him off to buy that. Because the one thing that's consistent in real estate is things go up in price and things go down in price. And the thing that always goes down first is dirt. The thing that always goes down the farthest is dirt. And the last thing to come back up is dirt. So, as a lender, there are lenders that will lend on dirt, and you'll find out why they do if you ever call one because the price is not cheap. So, I like to try to make sure I'm coaching them through it because that's going to be a big investment. And they got to make sure they really understand what they're getting into. And, ultimately they're adults and they're going to make their own business decision. And I'll try to tell them, hey, make sure you know this, know that, talk to someone. The great thing too about the building industry is, and I'm sure you've experienced this with all the different builders you've interviewed, is most builders are not super territorial. I have to be the top builder in the world. I'm sure the big national builders all like to beat up on each other, but the small guys, there's a medium guy who's already done that in your area who'd probably be more than happy to go out and have a coffee with you and tell you, oh, yeah, if you're building in this municipality, you got to watch out for this inspector and you got to make sure you have this piece of paperwork done and you got to get that done. Ask around because it's a community. Builders like to help other builders be successful because I think everyone sees that if we're building houses, it builds up people want to buy houses. And if you're successful in your subdivision, that's going to set nice comps for me and my subdivision. So I want you to be successful so that I can be successful. So don't be afraid to just go out and also ask people that are in your area that have done what you're looking to do to say, hey, here's what we got and see where you can get that assistance to help you.
It's interesting. I interviewed one of the builders who was on East Coast, and he was pouring concrete. And then he had that epiphany, I can be doing something better. And he bought, I think it was an old gas station or fire hall, something like that that had been burnt down. That would have been an irony, that fire hall that burnt
Yeah.
down. But he buys this thing and he starts developing it. And then a bunch of developers swoop in and cut him a big check. So he never got the opportunity to finish it. So he takes the money and says, thank you very much. He finds another piece property and he starts developing that. I think it was a 7-story, like a boutique condo that he started working on. And same thing, developers came in, cut him a big check, and he's saying, okay, anything I touch is gold. He decides, I'm going to pack up. And like the Beverly Hillbillies, he goes to California. And then he finds out what building is really like. And he was telling me horror stories about trying to get permits done that would take a year sometimes, trying to get water permits that would be like $100,000 and more. And these are all these expenses that he never dreamed of in his wildest imagination, that you could go to a state where it's almost like they're purposely trying to hinder you as a builder to build homes. But you would never know that if A, you didn't ask the questions, or B, you didn't find out the hard way and try to do it. So to your point, that makes sense. Builders want to share their pain, not like it's a badge of courage, but yeah, the more we build, the more the values go up and everybody wins, right?
Yeah, because they're definitely unknown things. I mean, I had a client who they didn't talk to me before they did it. They got this great deal on an old boarded up gas station, right? Prime location. Hey, we're going to build some townhomes here. This awesome location. And you're absolutely right. It's an awesome location. What are you doing about those old gas storage tanks in the ground?
Environmental studies.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're just
yeah.
going to dig them up. Again, something they thought was going to cost X to get ready to build costs X times four. Don't think you know it all.
I don't think I know it all. I think yeah, there's a big empty space there for rent. If you look closely, you'll see the sign. Let's get back to that idea of underwriting. How
Mhm.
can a builder, let's go back to the mid-sized builder, how can they make your life easier and more likely that they're going to be approved? And what's that process of underwriting? Like, is there a progression? Here's a number of steps. Here's a form. Like, how would you coach them through that process? And I know I'm asking you a hog of a question, and I want you to condense it. But can you give us the Reader's Digest version of what they can be doing to underwrite their projects and then present it to you?
Well, for me, we're gonna pretend it's someone they're already approved. We're gonna deal with the getting the builder approved. We're just gonna be talking a project. All I need to put together a rough and dirty term sheet for a builder is tell me what you paid for the lot, when you bought it, how much it's going to cost you to build the house, and what you think you're going to sell it for. Those 4 pieces of information. That's all I need that I could build you a term sheet in 5 minutes or less. To
Do that
say
one more time, Brian. I got 3. I got the cost of the land,
when you bought
the
it,
co
what it's going to cost you to build, your build budget, and what you think you're going to sell the house for. We're using, obviously some estimations because sometimes you'll get guys say, "Yeah, I'm going to sell this house for 800,000 and it appraises at 725." Well, we adjust that, but with those numbers right there, we can put together really quickly. Here's a term sheet. Here's what this loan would. Here's how much we could lend. Here's what your interest rate would be. Here's what your origination would cost you, and then right then and there, they can look and it will also, I'll calculate it right in there saying, yeah, you still need to show up with $50,000 cash. Or no, this one works out perfect. You don't need to bring any cash in to close this deal. And they can right then quickly make a decision on like, okay, yeah, this deal makes sense. Let's keep going. Or they'll either say, we think you're a jerk, Brian. We don't like your numbers. Go pound sand. And we're going to go use a different lender. Or they end up like, yeah, this deal doesn't make much sense for us. We're going to move on to the next.
It's that first piece of the puzzle is the premise that they've already bought the land versus they're coming to you for money to buy the
Yeah,
land.
if they're coming, I can
Yeah.
do that too. It can also be,
Okay.
yeah, I need to buy this lot, purchase price of the lot, your budget, and what it's going to be worth. I mean, in that case, it's guaranteed you're going to be coming in with some cash to close.
Okay.
You got to have some skin in the game. Again, I tell you, I run into people all the time want to build these projects and they're telling me how they're going to make millions and millions of dollars, but they don't have a nickel to bring into the deal. And it's like, well, that's just not how it works. Because if you didn't need any money, then I don't need you. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah. No offense to Oklahoma, but that's what they used to call it, the Oklahoma deals.
So I had an ancestor that was part of the Oklahoma land rush. So
Wow. Brian, any parting words here? Any advice to builders that, number one, want to make that first jump into being their own contractor, and then to the guys that are looking to take it to the next level?
I would say don't get distracted by shiny objects. And by shiny objects, I mean the big, fancy, beautiful house I can put in the Parade of Homes or Street of Dreams or whatever it's called in your area. Think about highly marketable. Build a product that the amount of people that can show up and buy it from you when you're done is the largest chunk of society possible. That's what you want to build. And that you can do over and over and over and over again. You can build a very successful business doing that. Look at all the giant national builders. They aren't building these multi-million dollar homes. And if you look at how they all started just building cookie cutter houses and they just started building more and more and more of them. And that's how you can build a successful business because you can build all the houses you want. If no one wants to buy them or no one can buy them, you're going to go out of business.
This kind of reminds me of something. I think it was Dan Kennedy, the famous copywriter, would say, which is more important, having the best hamburger or a hungry crowd?
Right.
Hungry crowd wins every time, right? And I think it's the same thing for the builder perspective. And in real estate, from a residential side, I see that all too often where new agents will come into the business and they'll fall in love with a subdivision. And it's like, oh, I've always dreamed of living here. And that's where they focus all their efforts and they're sending in postcards and calendars and all that wonderful stuff. They didn't take the 10 minutes to look over the sales history and see that when somebody moves in there, the average turnover is 10 to 15 years. So there ain't nothing going to be happening there for a long, long time, but they're priming this well that literally has no water. So that's great advice for a builder that's stepping into this. You want to go to where the hungry crowd is, and if that crowd is looking for the 5 to 700 price range, and they need the 3 bedroom home or whatever it is, cater to your market, right? I guess cater to the market versus satisfying your ego. Maybe that's a better way to look at it.
Right, right. You don't need to be building things that are showing up in architectural digests and you want to show all your cool friends, oh, look at this cool house I built. You do enough of those little houses successfully, you can build your own cool house
Yeah,
that you live in that you show all your friends.
great. Brian, I want to thank you for taking time out. Anything before we land this aircraft that I haven't touched on that you think we should address?
No, I think just, for builders out there, there is capital, there's options to help them grow, and they just always gotta show up and be ready to understand someone's looking to lend you money, so they are gonna ask you questions and be prepared to answer them and try to find that way you can come up with a solution. And that's where we wanna step in, and we wanna try to help builders get a solution to build something cool.
Well, I love the idea that you want to be part of the solution and taking it back to that BOHOG that we talked, the big, hairy, audacious goal is Sound Capital's goal of building or funding 1,000,000 doors. And that's where that partnership comes in. We need the right builders to come on board that share that vision of let's make America better.
Yeah.
My friend, thanks again for taking out time today. And I'm looking forward to part 2.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.